Wyoming for 5 minutes.
You know, I've been involved in these wolf issues for several decades now. And to say that states are fully capable of managing this apex predator and maintaining recovered wolf populations is really an understatement. All we need to do is look at Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho, and you can see the success story that has happened over the last 20-some years as those states have taken over management. The recovery goals in those three states was initially 100 wolves in each, Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming. That eventually changed to 150 wolves to, as always happens with the Endangered Species Act, to provide a buffer above what the recovery goals were. Wyoming reached the recovery goals in, I believe it was about 2002. Montana and Idaho have a similar history. Over the next 15 years, I fought to delist the wolves in Wyoming and force the Fish and Wildlife Service to actually manage them in the way that they indicated that they would when they did the recovery plan starting in the mid-1990s. The Fish and Wildlife Service failed in so many ways of actually managing these wolves and protecting our other wildlife populations, protecting our livestock producers, et cetera, and our communities. But again, Wyoming, stepping up to the plate, as we typically do when it comes to wildlife management, we have maintained over 350 wolves in the state of Wyoming for the last many years. Finally, in 2017, we were successful with the Circuit Court of Appeals in Washington, D.C., of all places, finding that we had met the recovery goals and that Wyoming's wolf management plan provided an adequate regulatory mechanism under the Endangered Species Act so that the state of Wyoming could manage pursuant to our wolf management plan as adopted by our legislature. In Montana and Wyoming, they each have well over 1,000 wolves. And again, I'm going to repeat that. The recovery goal is 150. In each of those states, they have over 1,000 wolves, demonstrating that, yes, the states are fully capable of managing these resources and have historically done so. The problem with the Endangered Species Act and the idea that we can never delist species is it is actually demonstrating that the act itself is the failure. It's not the states that are failing. The states do a very, very good job of managing almost all of our wildlife resources, whether it is elk or moose or antelope or mule deer or a deer or whitetail or wild turkeys or duck or geese. You can go on and on and on and go through all of the species. It's the states that manage these resources, not the federal government, not the Fish and Wildlife Service. And in fact, even when you're talking about a species that is on the endangered species list, it is often the state that is responsible for the management. Just as an example, the state of Wyoming has spent over $1 million recovering and managing the grizzly bear, whereas the Fish and Wildlife Service has spent just a minimal amount of money, not even comparable. What does that mean? What does that demonstrate? Wyoming's the one that is responsible for the recovery of the grizzly bear, not the Fish and Wildlife Service, and really not even the Endangered Species Act. It's the fact that we have really good managers and professionals in the state of Wyoming who know how to do this. So whenever we get into these debates as to whether a particular species that is fully recovered should be delisted, what I find so interesting is that when you argue against it, despite the numbers that we're talking about, when anyone argues against it, what they're really saying is that the Endangered Species Act itself has failed. Not the state managers, not the people who are responsible for these species. So when you look at the gray wolf, whether it's in Minnesota, and we've done a hearing in Minnesota, I've had an opportunity to go and visit with the people who are impacted there. They've lost almost their entire sheep industry in the state of Minnesota because of wolf depredation. You look at their deer population. If you want to talk about wildlife management, the reality is you have to have a balance. You have to have a balance between these, and especially when you're talking about an apex predator such as a grizzly bear or a gray wolf. I commend the folks who brought this incredibly important bill for bringing it forward. I think, again, this is something to celebrate. The wolf population in the United States has recovered. It is not on the brink of extinction. It is not endangered. It is not threatened. It has been fully recovered in a substantial part of its historical range, including in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and the Great Lakes, Michigan. And so congratulations on bringing this bill. I look forward to supporting it. Thank you for bringing it forward. With that, I yield.
Gentlewoman,